Oh my gosh, it's so exciting. You've got a job offer. And now you're finding yourself wondering, do I negotiate my salary? Or do I just accept what I'm offered? And the answer to this question is, like most questions, I guess, it all depends. It's very important to realize that the salary that you start on in a new organization is incredibly difficult to move up from. If you're going to move, it's going to require you to negotiate an increase later on along the line or to get promoted. The flip side to that, though, is you don't want the salary negotiation to be the deal breaker. So in today's video, I'm going to tell you how to understand your bargaining position and how to negotiate your salary. So let's get started. How do you understand your bargaining position? The first question you need to ask yourself is, are you currently employed? So have you gone for an interview at a new company and you've received an offer and you've got an existing job that you're currently at? If you are, then naturally you have a little bit of a stronger bargaining position because you can always just fall back onto the status quo if you're unable to reach terms with your new employer that you would be satisfied with. And obviously the prospective employer is aware of this. Speaking as somebody who has negotiated a number of times with employees over salaries and things like that, this is certainly something that I would be taking into consideration going, well, it looks like they have a little bit of a bargaining position here, so I need to ask myself, how badly do I want this individual to join our organization? The second question you got to ask yourself to determine your bargaining power is, are my skills rare or scarce, or am I just a dime a dozen? Okay, so if you have a certain qualification or a certain expertise that is quite hard to find, naturally that is going to give you a stronger bargaining position than if there are hundreds or thousands of qualified candidates with similar skills and abilities to your own. The third thing is, was remuneration raised in the interview or lead up stages to this point? So did you get the question, what is your salary expectation in the interview? And if so, how did you respond to that question? Was the remuneration specified on the job advertisement? Was the remuneration disclosed to you during the discussions with the hiring manager or the recruiter? Naturally, this is important because a lot of the groundwork then has already been laid, because now we know more or less the band within which we can negotiate. If it was specified that the job is between 100 and 110,000 made up dollars, for example, then that is where the negotiation would have to stem from. It's not great when it hasn't been spoken about at all, because then you don't really know where to start. So it's not ideal, but it's really, really helpful if it has been raised. And a tip to you here would be to try to force the conversation somewhere in the process a little bit earlier than here, so you know more or less where the company's at, where the company's number is, and then you can start from an informed or educated position. The fourth thing, have you disclosed your current earnings? This is a double-edged knife. Number one, if you earn quite a bit lower than the position, then it's really, really difficult to justify why you need to earn more, because you can only really say that I was underpaid, and it's just sometimes a difficult sell. On the flip side, if you were earning quite a lot more than what the position wants to pay, I don't think you're going to enter or leave for a role that pays you less, so that can potentially hold you in good stead. Remember that the reason for disparities in organizations' pay structures is largely due to the circumstances within which those individuals arrived at the company. I think there's a lot of ignorance around this. People just look at the salary and say, well, Mary earns more money than me and she does the same job. It's so unfair. Unfortunately, the corporate world is unfair, because maybe at the time that Mary was appointed, the person whose position was vacant, there was a lot of urgency to fill that position, and therefore Mary had a stronger level of bargaining position than yourself. Or she came from a company where she was being paid more and she didn't want to take a pay cut, so they matched what she was on. Whatever the case might be, this is the reality of, if you don't negotiate when you enter a new company, these are the kinds of disparities that you can find yourself with. The next thing you got to ask yourself is there a sense of urgency in me starting? Okay, this is important, because if the position is vacant and they really, really want to get going, then that's going to give you a stronger position, because they're going to just want to have peace of mind that you're going to start as soon as possible. Conversely, if the interview process took quite a number of months and there was a first round and a second round and a third round and all this sorts of paraphernalia, then they're probably willing to wait a bit longer. They've probably got a plan B. If you have a weak bargaining position, don't worry. In my career, only once did I ever negotiate my salary. At all other times, I accepted what was offered to me. Alternatively, what I did is I proved myself within those organizations and I negotiated raises and I got myself promoted. Video series coming on how I did that very, very soon. But if you have arrived in your mind that you want to negotiate your salary now when you've received your job offer, then this is exactly how to do it. Whether direct or through a recruiter, the principles and the process is more or less exactly the same. The first piece of advice I give here is to be unemotional. When you show desperation or a need or that you're timid or that you are uncertain, it is going to give the advantage to your opponent. Okay, that's kind of how you need to see a negotiation. It is a little bit of a battle between you and the party. You've got conflicting agendas, right? So the one wants to offer as little as possible, the other one wants to get as much as possible, okay? And giving an edge on the emotional side is going to be a big disadvantage. So unemotional, I'm sure you've heard the term EQ or emotional intelligence, soft skills. This is where this kind of thing comes into play. Focus on the issues that are rational and keep the discussion in a rational tone and rational manner. All right, so let's get into the substance of it. Now we need to look at objective arguments. You need to eliminate your personal circumstances from the discussion entirely. They are not relevant. Where you live, if you live 100 kilometers or 50 kilometers away and you need to drive more, that cannot factor in, because then the organization is just going to go, well, then I should have just appointed somebody closer. If your dog died last year and you've got friggin' medical expenses for your dog, it is a terrible joke and a horrible, horrible example. But the fact is, your personal circumstances do not impact the market value of the role that you are trying to do or the job that you're trying to get or that you now have got, all right? People get this wrong all the time. They go, oh, I've got problems in my life. I need to pass this burden on to the company. The company needs to pay me more money. It doesn't work like that. It's not the company's problem. Salaries are driven by market forces, i.e. the availability and supply and demand of those skills on the job market. It is no more, no less complicated than that. Therefore, your arguments need to be centered around those market forces as well. Avoid confrontational phrases like I want, I deserve, and use more passive phrasing like I would be more comfortable if. Say things like the expectation created around the role was more around this ballpark, then you told me that. I was led to believe this. This is what it should be. This is what I was told. This is what I think. I've got a sample answer that I like to use. I've in fact used this in my career, so I will share it with you now. This career change was about growth for me, both in the role and in remuneration. It really doesn't make sense for me to change if I cannot achieve both of these goals. Now this is dynamite if you've got a job, because then you're kind of saying, why do I need to give up my friends, my colleagues, a job that I'm good at, a place where I'm quite well established to move here if I'm not going to gain something from it? And this is where an interview tip, a top interview tip comes into play. Never, ever, ever have anything bad to say about your current employer. You need to convince the panel that you are happy where you are and you're only wanting to move because this is going to be an opportunity for you to grow and to achieve your career aspirations. If you're putting down your employer or it has come across that you're unhappy or desperate to go, then you do not have any bargaining power. People know that you're desperate to leave and therefore they will not be interested in giving you anything more than what they're willing to offer for the role. If you don't have a job, then perhaps circumstances where you've got time, in other words, you've got enough savings to keep looking for another job, you could potentially use this. But at the end of the day, if you're on the job market and you're unemployed, as a standard rule of thumb, you probably don't have that much bargaining power. My next piece of advice is be patient. You might not get the outcome you want right away. You may come up with a number, there may be a few conversations, a couple of stalls, we'll come back to you, we need to discuss this, we need to review this. That's okay. They're testing your nerve. If they are stalling, then they're obviously discussing it internally, but they're also waiting to see who's deviating for a position because you start to have second thoughts and you're not sure and you're like, no, it's fine, I'll just take what you give me. It's a stalling tactic and it's an effective negotiating tactic. So don't be too stressed out about it. Don't freak out if you don't get the answer right away. Stick to your guns, and as long as you stay rational in your approach, then the organization will put your options down on the table for you. They'll say, look, we've thought about it, and unfortunately we are not able to do anything better than X. At least they've given you a choice, and then it's up to you again to decide how you want to move forward. And the last thing, which is sort of a negotiation 101, is know your middle ground number, okay? So if you want 110, you ask for 115 or 120, not much more than that, because you don't want to now land on space and be miles out of the ballpark. Always try and aim for the upper end of the range. Your counter will always aim for the middle end of the range, and the lower end of the range, and you're kind of always going to land up concluding in the middle. So in summary, do I just accept what I'm offered? It all depends on your bargaining position. If you feel you have good bargaining position, then negotiate unemotionally, have your target in mind, keep your arguments rational, and I think you'll be off to a good start where you're at the solid, fair remuneration where you can be happy and content and focus on settling down and growing in your new role. If you're meeting for the first time, my name is Matthew. I'm a career strategy and personal finance enthusiast. I make new content every Sunday. So if you'd like to see more videos from me, then subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and I will see you soon.